Okay, I'm going to level with you. You've been clickbaited. Basically, this video is looking back at all my previous kind of scents and fragrances through the years. It's kind of like a scent memories type situation. So if that's not your thing, probably best you stop watching now. For clickbaiting you, I've got nothing more to say other than soz. Word to your mother, my name's Steve, this channel is Fragrance Riches, and thank you for tuning in. So, as I've already mentioned, this is responding to a tag video. So Matt at Questioning Scents, which I'll link down below, tagged me to do this video, which I don't know if it was started by, but he was tagged by Barry at Scentualise, and it's looking at, I think it's like ghosts of fragrance past. So basically it's looking at my fragrance journey, which is kind of quite a wanky thing that you often hear in Fragcom. To sort of how it kind of got started and all the fragrances from my past and how I feel about them now, etc, etc. So I'm not going to kind of drag this on and talk too much, because if I'm honest, my fragrance history is really quite unexciting, because I didn't kind of become a proper frag head until like in my 30s, and I'm only 37 now. I nearly said 38. So there's a lot of the past is actually quite kind of boring and uninteresting, if I'm honest. So let's just crack on and get this done, shall we? So my first perfume or fragrance. So as everybody of my generation, I had like Axe or Lynx body spray. So the natural progression for me, when I was about 13, 14, I started using, as my first cologne or aftershave, I started using Lynx or Axe, like a splash on kind of like aftershave thing. But you'll be pleased to hear, even back then, I didn't want to be one of the sheep. I didn't want to kind of smell like everybody else. So I didn't go for Lynx Africa. I actually went for Lynx Atlantis. So yeah, already I was kind of setting trends back then, you know what I mean? The smell that represents my teens, that would probably be
warm apple pie.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Aside from that, if I had to think about a fragrance, I think a fragrance I wore a lot through my teens, because basically my progression on fragrances started out as shit, like Lynx, Atlantis, and it just basically got slowly less shit. Still shit, but slowly less shit. So I went from like Lynx, Atlantis, splash on, aftershave, and I remember I wore a lot in my teens a fragrance from French Connection, which you could actually buy in like Boots Pharmacy or the French Connection store, like the clothing store. So I guess it's a classes as a designer. It was called at the time Number One. They did Number One, Number Two, Number Three. Several years later, they rebranded them as like Urban and something else. But it was, yeah, Number One. It had a kind of blue writing, and it actually smelled really nice, to be honest. In my teens, the smell I liked least, which I unfortunately could become quite accustomed to, would be the smell of rejection. Fragrances in my 20s that I didn't like. Again, I wasn't really a frag head then, so I didn't kind of try loads and discover things I did and didn't like. I remember my first blind buy, so I got, as I said before, I basically got progressively slightly less shit, but still shit. So I kind of went from like Lynx to French Connection, Number One, and I remember wearing David Beckham Instinct quite a lot, actually, as well. And then I discovered CK1. And back then I thought I was the don, because I had this designer fragrance. I thought I was like the man, and I went through a shitload of CK1. And because of that, I then started looking, I guess, I kind of almost, the mentality was looking at flankers or fragrances of similar nature. So I remember blind buying CKB, thinking, like looking at reviews. I think I looked at Fragrantica and stuff, and yeah, trying that. And I wouldn't say I disliked it, but I didn't like it as much as CK1. It was a bit of a disappointment. But even back then, I was kind of stubborn, so I would just wear a fragrance until I used it all up. I guess I didn't want to waste my money or whatever. So even though I wouldn't say I disliked it, but I didn't like it as much, but I still ended up wearing a full bottle of CKB and finishing it off. But yeah, that was my first blind buy, and yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of it as such. Fragrances from my past that I still wear, it would have to be this, which is Hypnose from Lancôme. So this is Hypnose Pour Homme. I think to this day this is the only male fragrance that Lancôme do, I think. But it's got a wicked twisted glass bottle. I absolutely love this bottle. It's so cool. But this, not this particular fragrance, but Hypnose was actually bought for me by an ex-girlfriend. So I remember I kind of had CK1 and all those kind of shitty ones like that. And she bought me my first designer one away from that. So she bought me Hugo from Hugo Boss, cliche I know. And then I think it was like Christmas or so after, she then bought me this because she really liked it. She smelt it and loved it. So yeah, Hypnose Pour Homme. And this is a lovely kind of sort of warm, spicy, evening, sexy kind of fragrance. So this is a lovely, lovely fragrance, which is highly underrated. Not really spoken about. Performance isn't great, but this is an absolute hidden gem. I stand by this. It still smells good. And yeah, it's a kind of sexy evening kind of fragrance. The man in the marketing was kind of wearing like a black suit, or it's kind of like very much an evening attire. But this just smells great. So I used to wear this quite a lot going out, kind of evening, going out, dating, whatever, clubbing, whatever I did back then. Fragrances from my past that I won't wear now is probably CK1. As I mentioned earlier, I wore a fuck ton of that fragrance. So I actually used to buy, because it basically became my daily driver that I used to wear to work every day. So I used to buy like the 200ml bottles, and I remember finishing at least 2 of those and another 1 or 2 100ml bottles. So I've easily done over half a litre of CK1. So for that reason, I just can't wear it now. I've worn it to death. It just kind of brings back these memories. It's actually a nice, clean, fresh smell, but any regular viewers of the channel might remember that I recently purchased as blind buy Penhaligon's Quercus, and it had a remarkable similarity. It's like a niche version of CK1, and I ended up selling that. I flipped it as kind of a catch and release because it just reminded me too much of CK1, so I can't kind of wear it now. It just, yeah, I'm just sort of sick of it, and it kind of, I feel like rather than bringing back nice memories, it just feels like I'm living in the past. So yeah, I can't wear CK1 anymore. A good memory that I associate with my past. I think all my memories I associate with my past. Okay, if I had to choose something, there's the obvious. So everybody knows, I've spoken about it a million times, Armani Diamonds. I've worn this a lot through the years. I kind of discovered this, and this kind of got me into fragrances in many ways, and I wore this on numerous dates out with the wife, and I wore this on our wedding day as well, so obviously that kind of gets mentioned. But there's a lot of like silly little things that I remember. I remember my first compliment was actually on Hugo from Hugo Boss, the one I mentioned earlier. I used to kind of do a lot of salsa dancing. I used to actually teach salsa as well, and I remember one time after a night of dancing outside a club, talking to a girl, kind of walked her back to a car, and that was my first compliment that I can remember on a fragrance. I say that, I don't know if she actually did compliment me. She's kind of sort of smelled and went, "Oh, are you wearing Hugo Boss?" And I said yes. And I don't know if that was a compliment, if she actually said that smells nice, but I remember her noticing my fragrance. So that was one of my first fragrance memory associations. I guess it's the closest thing I'm ever going to get to a compliment. So I remember that. And then there's a lot of little things like Ultramole reminds me quite a lot of my brother, not Ultramole, the original Le Male, sorry, from Jean Paul Gaultier. So that kind of reminds me of going on holiday with him because he used to wear that. And Bleu de Chanel reminds me quite a bit actually of holiday again with my brother in Prague. So yeah, there's a lot of little things like that, and that's what I love about fragrance. It's very vivid and powerful, but conversely it loses some accuracy. So you'll smell something and you'll know it, but you can't quite place it, and that's also infuriating. So that's it. That's a little quick whistle-stop tour from my fragrances. As I say, they were really quite shit. It was only in my 30s that I started kind of really becoming a frag head, and started kind of getting more and more fragrances and trying them, and I started dabbling more in blind buys, etc, etc. So yeah, fairly short-lived, really, not too interesting. Sorry, Matt, but I didn't want to let you down. I wanted to do the tag. I suppose I better tag some other people. I don't know who's done this tag, but I'll be curious to see what the ladies, Clemence CC Fragrance, what her kind of journey was, because she's very much from an early age, it seems, was kind of influenced into kind of fragrance from her mother and stuff, I believe. So I can imagine hers is probably a lot better early on as opposed to me, who kind of got into it quite late. And I'd also like to know what Josephine actually as well at Jus de Rose. I'd like to know what her kind of journey is. Again, her career is based around fragrance and stuff, so I'd like to know kind of what kind of got her into it, what was her first early fragrance memories and fragrances that she bought. So those are my 2 tags. I don't know how many people I'm supposed to tag, but that's it. Thank you for watching. I know this sort of thing's not for everybody. Some of you just want to know what's gonna, get you compliments and shit, and that's cool. But I didn't want to let the side down. So thanks, Matt, for the tag. I do appreciate it, and thank you for thinking of me. I'll tag all those channels below, so do check them out if you haven't already done so. Other than that, I will see you for the next exciting instalment of Frags to Riches. Take care and much love.